Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of News Others Miss, the great Harry the Greek. Today is October 10th, and this is part 5 of the series on Mr. Eugene Yu, better known as his legal name is Jianwei Yu. We've got, I opened the show today with the great MC5 doing American Ruse. That came out 50 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. 50 years ago, they were talking about the system as being more than a tiny bit corrupt, and people being disillusioned and trying really hard to do everything that your civics teacher told you to do and not getting anywhere. Okay, so we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday, and let's pull up Harry's great website, newsothersmiss.com, and let's see. Share screen. All right, let's go down. Again, this is, according to Harry himself, this is one of the biggest cases in the recent history of corruption in DC as well as in New York and Los Angeles. Mr. Yu is a Chinese national, a card-carrying member of the Communist Party. He was arrested in East Lansing approximately October 2nd. He was held with $1 million bond on a misdemeanor, and somehow he is out, and I'm still trying to find out if his precise location right now is still somewhere in Michigan or now in Los Angeles. So we're going to, well, before we get into the case itself, I want to do just a brief background, 3 or 4 minutes, on why elections are so important in the American system. And you say, "Oh, John, we all know that already, right? You're not telling us anything we don't need to know." Hold on a minute, because I spent 32 years in Italy, and we have elections there too, and we learned the hard way that if you don't know why you're voting, you're not gonna, your prosperity is going to be injured. Okay, so back around, bear with me here. Let's go back to the early days of the American Constitution, or I should say, having formed the Continental Congress, having adopted and ratified the new American Constitution. There was still a lot of debate on whether or not who could vote, how much rights certain types of citizens had, if everyone is allowed one vote, and if all the votes were weighed equally, and whether or not you had to be a landowner to vote. There was still a lot of debate. And even after the adoption of the Bill of Rights, there was a lot of debate on what were rights. Well, at this point, from around 1715 to 1789, this whole idea of rights was new and expanding and flourishing, and there was a lot of debate on what rights were. And I'll explain why this is important to the case of Eugene Yu in a few minutes. It was important for citizenship. In order to have citizenship in this brand new country, which is still a little nebulous, you had to show yourself to be loyal to the idea of an America that was free, and that you had a vested interest. That's the key word. You had a vested interest in the prosperity of the state. Remember, these are sovereign states. Each of the 13 was a sovereign state. You had a vested interest in the long-term prosperity of that state. Prosperity in every sense of the word. That was key to giving someone citizenship. Okay, and not everyone for example, in Virginia, there were roughly 1.9 million people in Virginia in 1789, and only about 15% of them could vote. Okay, because there were a lot of slaves. Women did not have the vote yet, and I think you had to be 21. I'm not sure about that, but not everyone could vote. Um, but these were citizens largely because they had many acres of land, and they had a vested interest in making sure that the laws governing that land or the operation of that land or conflict, the solution of conflicts was by men elected, honorable men. They had to be above all honorable, and that these men also had proven themselves. For example, most of the elected officials were also farmers, or had some kind of uh, of of an activity that rendered helped the prosperity of that state. So they had to be honorable. They had proven themselves to be hard workers, that they were generating some kind of prosperity for the state, and they had to be uh, free of conflict of interest. They had to be free uh, of large debts to some powerful figure. Um, they all the things that I learned when I was 10 years old, you had to be in order to become a member of elected government. All right. Now, why is this important? If you Let me back up. Let me put Jianwei Yu's case in a similar fact. Let's draw an analogy. Let's say that I had $5 million. Um, I'm looking around. No, I don't. I don't have $5 million right now. But if I had them, and I wanted to go to Nanjing and open up a aerospace parts company, the the um, the powers that be in Nanjing territory would say, Mr. Wilkins, come right in. You're perfectly free to open an aerospace business, especially if you want to hire 100 people and put them to work at above, even $20 an hour would be unheard of in China. But that come right in. Now, let's say that I was successful and I'm generating $50 million a year in revenue, and things are going, especially now with the increase in military sales. My aerospace business is doing really well, and then I say to to some of the political powers in that area, Nanjing. Now I would like to open up an election or voting solutions business. They would say, oh, uh, problem. We have a problem. They would not allow me to open a voting solutions business there in Nanjing. Why? Because I was not born there. For 57 years, I did not live there, and I don't have a vested interest in the long-term prosperity of that region. Maybe I do, but they don't know that for sure. So now we come to the special case of Mr. Jianwei Yu, also known as Eugene Yu, who opened Konnech Voting Solutions. That's Konnech. And you've got to ask yourself, why is the state of Michigan doing so much business with Mr. Yu's startup? He lived most of his life outside the United States. He is a card-carrying member of the Chinese Communist Party, and he doesn't necessarily have, not for the little research I've done, he doesn't have a vested interest in the long-term prosperity of Michigan as a sovereign state. So what's going on here? And why is this such a big deal? Why is his arrest and sudden transfer to Los Angeles such a big deal? For those who are just tuning in for the first time, yesterday we explained that at the request of Mr. George Gascon, the DA in Los Angeles, he is or will soon be transferred from East Lansing to Los Angeles. This is a big deal because if you believe that there is a solution to the social issues through the voting booth, not many people do nowadays, but if you do believe that, if you believe that voting still works, then you better find out what Konnech Voting Solutions was up to, who they worked with, where were they getting their money, why was some of this money why some of these transfer of funds and the grants, I don't know if there were any loans, but there were some grants involved. And there's the official paper trail to show that those funds were allocated according to the laws on the books for the state of Michigan for services, above the board services connected with voting machines. And I don't know Mr. Yu personally. I can't say whether the equipment and the personnel that he provided to the state of Michigan or the various precincts was on the level. I can only say that the paper trail is in question now. The paper trail showing that the funds allocated by various counties in Michigan to his process, to his voting machines, voting solutions company. He didn't actually build the machines. He just worked with the periphery, with the logistics and the arrangement of staffing of the precincts. If you believe in the voting process, if you believe that our vote still matters, you, especially voters in Michigan, you have to go and dig down in this story. You have to ask the people in each affected county, what were they doing? Will you show us, prove to us that Mr. Konnech is innocent, or at least that his solutions company based in Michigan had satisfied all the requirements and had followed the law, and that all the money that they obtained from each county was according to the rules, okay? That you played the game according to the rules. Because if not, then there's something very fishy going on, and you have to wonder if maybe the Chinese Communist Party and others have a vested interest in making sure that the election goes a certain way, starting with Whitmer. Okay. So let's go into Harry's article. Sorry for that sidetrack, but I think it's fundamental. It's fundamental that we understand why voting is important and why it's important to dig down on this particular case. All right. That is the wrong article. Let's go back up. Okay, Chinese spy Eugene Yu works with the FBI to fix the November 8th election. All right, here we have. First of all, it's odd that yesterday we covered the three red flags of Mr. Yu's arrest by uh, not by the a DA from Detroit or from Lansing, but by a DA from Los Angeles, and then the fact that he was given a $1 million bail, $1 million bond for a misdemeanor, fugitive from justice, and that he didn't show up for his I don't know if it was a hearing or trial, but he did not show up on October 5th. And we played a little bit of that video from Judge Donald Allen's courtroom, in which even Judge Allen is shaking his head. I don't believe this. This is, I've seen everything. I've seen everything, but this tops it. So the let's go deep down a little bit more. Okay, we covered yesterday Konnech great work at his articles at Substack. I encourage everybody to go visit those again. And the FBI now is certainly, you have to wonder if is the FBI more corrupt than we thought 2 years ago. Okay, you when I read these articles, Harry's and Konech's, even I'm wondering, oh, maybe it's far worse. Maybe it's just not 4 or 5 guys in each state. Maybe the corruption in the FBI is systematic. I mean, it's rotten to the core. It could be much worse than even I thought. FBI conceals Chinese infiltration of U.S. election software. Okay, this is we covered that yesterday. We covered the fact that he is and continues to be a member of the Chinese Communist Party in good standing. And we went through all the counties that in which his system's operating. And we just began to get into the patents when my internet went out. Okay, let's go into these 18 patents. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, Harry wrote this story a few days ago. He's now out of the jail in Lansing. A Donna Wang posted $100,000 in cash, greenbacks, for his release, because you're only supposed to put up 1/10 of the bond in order to get physical release of the person. He was arrested without finding any. Okay, that's the third red flag, the lack of proper paperwork on the arrest, and the fact that none of the usual information that Harry's able to obtain following an arrest was available. Harry ran into roadblock after roadblock trying to get some info on the details of the arrest and the hearing. Okay, let's go back to the patents. Dominion. We've all heard the name Dominion over and over since roughly 8 November of last year, of 2020. Here we have Hunter Biden with some of his colleagues. Here, I think it's this guy over here, Group Chairman Wang. Wait, I'm not positive of that. Okay. Here's, I think this is before his election. Okay, this is, okay, mid 2017. picture of with Lynn and Biden. Okay, where does Harry get his information? The U.S. Patent Office and the Canadian Patent Office are the source of this info on the patents held by Dominion, NBC, Covington, and Flynn Intel Group. I underlined the Flynn Intel Group. Okay, we're going to get into that a little bit later today and tomorrow as well. Tomorrow I'm going to dedicate at least half of the show to Flynn Intel Group and their involvement with Mr. Jianwei Yu's group back in China. Okay, China has an office within the U.S. Patent Office down in Alexandria. Until yesterday, I didn't know that. I'll bet most of you didn't know that. Most of the people living in Alexandria work for either the CIA or the NSA. Okay, let's go to U.S. government websites. Again, I continue to underline the fact that all of Harry's material, all of his sources are federal government websites, state government websites, the major NGOs, the WHO's website, the IMF's website, and things like the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Okay, these are in the public domain. The information is right there in front of your nose. You only have to dig for it. Spend a little time, roll up your shirt sleeves, get down into the details. And this is what Harry is asking. He's asking, he can't get around as fast as he used to. He's putting a lot of money. He can't do it all by himself. So he's looking for volunteers, especially in Los Angeles. If you live in Los Angeles County or Kern County or Orange County, and you can get up to Los Angeles for the trial, please contact me at the interim email is research.roadshow.5@gmail, and starting next Monday, it will be johnw@researchroadshow.com. Send me your availability and what kind of research or what kind of assistance you can give Harry there in Los Angeles. He needs that information urgently. Okay, here on the U.S. government, the U.S. Patent Office's website, we have all the interactions with Chinese entities, the Chinese patent entities. And if you're like me and you grew up in the aerospace environment or the automotive environment, you know that China doesn't always play fair when it comes to intellectual property. And maybe they've showed some improvements between 2010 and today, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. So, take some of the links in Harry's articles, go into the Chinese section of the patent office, pull up some of the key patents, and tomorrow I'll get into two of them, and figure out for yourselves and your neighbors and friends, because there's a lot of people, and this is my key point today. There's a lot of people who say, they admit that there's a little corruption here and there, but things will correct themselves because the men in shining armor on white stallions will come in and save the day, and then they'll get rid of all the corruption. The Chinese will go back home, and everything will be great. That's not going to happen. If these might very well be our very last elections, if you don't convince your neighbors, and your colleagues at work to go in groups of 6 physically, find your representative, ask him what he knows about this case, get to the bottom of it, force them to admit that they've seen the information coming out of WikiLeaks the past 12 years, and and force them to admit that they haven't been doing their job. I guess that's essentially what I'm trying to say. Get people in Michigan, if you live in Michigan, get people in Michigan, your elected representatives and the bureaucrats, to do their job and wave this in front of their face and ask them, what are you doing about this, Mr. Elected Representative? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing there for a second and go back to the case of George Gascon's wife. George Gascon, again, the risk of repeating myself, grew up in Havana, moved here when he moved to the United States when he was 13 with his parents. At the time, it looks like they were slightly right of center, but the basics of socialism, that socialism has some positive attributes, remain with the young George Gascon, and that shows in his early work as a law enforcement officer, and on the backing he got during his political career from people who are openly to the left or even far left. Mr. George Gascon, you bear with me while I pull that website up again. All right. Fabiola Kramsky. Fabiola Kramsky has had a long and lucrative career in mass media. And another reason that this case is important is because it begs the question if Mockingbird, Project Mockingbird is still alive and well, especially in Southern California. Because when you have a senior political figure married to a member of the mass media, the only six big companies control 99.5% of the media outlets, including internet outlets in America, folks. When you see a senior and highly visible political figure married to a long-standing member of the media and with lots of friends down in southern Manhattan, you've got to ask if Project Mockingbird really went away or not, and then go see your aforementioned elected representatives and ask them how much do they know about this case or what are they doing. Okay, here is Fabiola Kramsky's Twitter page, and she's all about, if you examine her Twitter, she's all about helping the underprivileged, using her position in front of the camera and behind the camera to help the bottom 20% of the population, okay, especially in Los Angeles. I'm sure the people on Skid Row just adore her for all the work that she's done. Okay, here she's talking about Halloween. Oh, this is last year. I'm sorry. Well, apparently she hasn't been active on Twitter, or this might be an older Twitter. I thought I pulled up. No, this is not the same account. Okay, sorry about that. All right, Ms. Fabiola Kramsky, who doesn't use, for some reason, doesn't go by her husband's last name, but that many women in Southern California don't use their husband's last name, but the it's I think it's very important to get to the bottom of this story and figure out who is actually uh, moving mountains in order to allow uh, Jianwei Yu escape justice in Lansing, Michigan. Okay, somebody, some powerful figures are using all of their power and pelf to help him get back to China. We have to find out who and why. Um, okay, enough of this is an older Twitter. I'm sorry for putting you through all this. Let's go back to okay. Here we have okay. We touched briefly before we got interrupted yesterday. We touched briefly about all of the district attorneys that George Soros has given $3 or $4 or $5 million to their campaign to make sure that they got elected. And not surprisingly, all of these people have pushed an agenda which is very anti-American. At least for people who grew up in flyover country, it looks very anti-American. And you could argue that they are very favorable to UN Agenda 2030 and affiliated announcements or programs of the UN. Okay, this is a good one. The Wall Street Journal article talking about the prisons. We're going to hear very much in the next few weeks about prisons being overturned or about hardened criminals being let out of prison, early parole, good behavior, or more often than not, uh, people who've been released have committed another heinous crime, and then they're let out on $500 bail. It happened 3 times in 1 week here in Georgia. 3 times in 1 week. Someone commits a violent crime with a death or dismemberment of a upstanding citizen, and they're out with $500 bail. How is that possible? So anyway, all of these people pushing, like Garcon, pushing a soft on crime agenda while taking money from people with ties to the Chinese Communist Party, it stinks to high heaven. All right, this is another great article by Harry that tied into this one. This is the um, Eric Holder and Bachelet working to improve Americans' access to justice. It's you know the we are supposed to have access to justice already. I don't understand why someone from the UN has to come help us give Don Wilkins and other citizens access to justice. That doesn't sound right. There's something fishy going on. Oh, and this is the other person that I wanted to bring into the story, and I'll get into her more tomorrow. Rachel Rossi, the deputy AG Rachel Rossi, will serve as director of the Office for Access to Justice. Very interesting career. Ms. Rachel Rossi, I'm surprised that she's not on the radar of many others in the alternative media. She's a very interesting figure. And I think that her official photographer was the same as Imran Awan's official photographer, but I have to verify that. Very good, very nice photo. Or I should say the photographic work was excellent. I wish that back when I was working with Film Mechanic, I wish that my official photo was so good. Access to Justice, the DOJ Access to Justice Department, Interagency Roundtable. Okay, we talked about this yesterday, and on White House letterhead, they announce how the executive branch of the government is going to improve Americans' access to justice. Sustainable development. It's all about sustainability, folks. In Los Angeles, above all, wherever you can't walk within 5 miles of City Hall in LA without hearing the word sustainability at least a dozen times. Everything is about sustainability, Agenda 2030, and the 17 goals. Goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Okay, again, the 16th goal is one of the 17 UN 2030 goals. I'm sorry, the 17 goals for United Nations Agenda 2030, and okay, there she is. There's her official photograph, Rachel Rossi. How are we doing? All right, I still have some bandwidth, so it looks like we're going to still be going for another 10 minutes. Rachel Rossi is an important figure, and she'll be, excuse me. All right. Like I said, tomorrow I'll go into a little more detail on Rachel Rossi's career and why is it not sharing. Okay, Rachel Rossi again is the head of the Access to Justice program within the DOJ, and we'll cover her career tomorrow. Now let's go back to Harry the Greek's article on Mr. Jianwei Yu and the very interesting details of his arrest and the hearings. All right, according to the Freedom of Information Act, we American people, especially the voters in the state of Michigan, have every right to know what documents were passed to and from Mr. Yu's company, Konnech Voting Solutions, as pertains to the 2018-2020 elections held in November of those respective years. Now, there was I think Harry put in a FOIA request. Harry asked to know about this $306,000 grant to Konnech, dated November 29th of 2021. What is that about? And Harry still hasn't received an answer, although these do take a little bit of time. But my feeling is that they shouldn't take more than 3 or 4 days, and with the electronic methods that we have now. And this is not digging back into something that happened in 1950. This is something that happened less than a year ago, and the electronic information should be readily available. So the Konnech Solutions obtained a grant of $306K, and Harry wants to see the paper trail. Harry wants to know if that grant was in line with all the vision norms and laws of the state of Michigan, and if there are any federal election standards. Okay, why is that not coming up?